good evening. The time is now 7 p.m. I hope everyone is safe from the storm. And I'm reconvening to open session and calling to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Indian Prairie School District 204 on Monday, August 10th, 2020. Jeannie, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Deming.
Here.
Ms. Peel.
Here.
Mr. Karubis.
Here.
Mr. Razak.
Here.
Ms. Donahue.
Here.
Mr. Rising.
Here.
Ms. Grover.
Here.
And we are all in attendance. Mr. Rising, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Rising. As a point of order, the next regular Board of Education meeting will be held on Monday, September 8th. As you know, boards of education are bound by strict provisions of the Open Meeting Act. As board president, I have determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent due to the pandemic. With the onset of COVID-19, some of the OMA guidelines have been relaxed. Specifically, board members do not have to be physically present. As a result, video or audio conferencing is allowed. Boards are encouraged to provide video or audio access to the meetings in order that the public may monitor the meetings. All other Open Meeting Act requirements remain in place. Quorum of the board must be present to participate. All meetings must be open to the public, except any portion of the meeting that is closed for one or more reasons in the Act. The meeting must include an opportunity for public comment. And the requirement relating to meeting notices, agendas, and minutes remain applicable. Please know that our board will continue to meet these requirements in this difficult time. And so it is now time for public comment for non-agenda items. 30 minutes is allowed for public comment, and each person is limited to 3 minutes. When addressing the board, we ask that you respect the confidentiality and safety of our students and school district personnel. We ask that those addressing the board be cognizant that this is an open meeting and is available to all age groups, and as such, ask that you consider who the audience members are and keep comments age appropriate. Public comment represents the voice and the opinion of the speaker. There will be no feedback from the board during the meeting, but follow-up will be provided by an administrator as appropriate. Our first speaker is Alicia Smith. Welcome, Alicia.
Hello, thank you very much. Good evening, members of the board and the 204 community. I am speaking today concerning inequity in our 204 schools. Indian Prairie School District 204 is an award-winning school district that is known for the excellent education that its students receive. I know that all of you believe that this excellence should be available to all students. Unfortunately, there are significant disparities in our elementary schools when it comes to low-income students. 16% of 204 student population is low income. There is one elementary school, Georgetown, whose low-income population percentage is 60%. Georgetown has 4 times the low-income population as the district average. There is no other school in District 204 that has a low-income population that is 4 times the district average. the district has created a school that is segregated by income. 50% of the state of Illinois student population is low income. At 60% low income, Georgetown School has a higher percentage of low income students than the state of Illinois, even though we are one of the few districts in the state to have as many as 21 elementary schools. I know that creating a school that is segregated from the rest by income was not intentional, but the data shows that these numbers have held steady for the last 5 years. And many of us know that the numbers have held steady for even longer. Georgetown has the highest percentage of both Black and Brown students in District 204. What are we telling these students when we allow significant inequities to exist for them, when we don't allow it to exist for any other school in the district? Many of those Black and Brown families moved to 204 so that their children could be exposed to an education they never had. Yet, we have recreated a school for their children, not unlike the segregated communities those families had left. A 2016 study found that in almost all major cities, Black and Brown students are much more likely to attend schools where most of their peers are considered poor or low income. Why are we, an award-winning school district, recreating structures that hold children back in Chicago within our own district? Research tells us Black and Brown students get a better education when they're not segregated. From the Concentration of Poverty in American Schools by Boschma and Brownstein, researchers have found that the single most powerful predictor of racial gaps in educational achievement is the extent to which students attend schools surrounded by other low-income students. The time is now to fix systemic inequities in our educational system. The needs and rights of children cannot wait. For a kindergartner who starts at Georgetown this
President
fall,
Razak, the speaker's time
would
has
begin-
expired.
another 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alicia. Our next speaker is Gina.
Good evening. Tonight I would like to address Black and Latinx student access to honors and AP courses. According to 2019 data, Black and Latinx students comprise 8.9 and 12% in the district respectively. The 9th grade AP coursework count was 645. Black student AP count was 16, or 2.4%. And the Latinx student AP count was 33, or 5.1%. The 12th grade total AP count was 1,437, yet the Black student count was 78, or 5.4%, and the Latinx student count was 123, or 8.6%. While counts increased from grade 9, those figures still are not proportional to the district's demographics. The underrepresentation of Black and Latinx students in AP courses is concerning. As the district is praised for the academic rigor offered to students, we must ask ourselves, which students? And how do students get on track to enroll in and complete AP coursework? 8th grade teachers recommend high school course placements, and those placements are locked during open course selection for core subjects. Parents have the ability to request course changes. However, the process involves signing a waiver. That waiver states, quote, "The teacher and department do not," bolded caps, "endorse this change." And quote, "If my child's work in the course, which I have requested, is not satisfactory, I agree that remedial measures will be my responsibility." These statements can be intimidating to many and may prevent many parents from continuing with the process of requesting a change. Finally, you may only request the change during registration. If your student ends up bored or lacking challenge in the assigned course, they must remain in that level. I know this from personal experience. My son was bored in Algebra 2 Trig and Stats, so we asked if he should be moved to honors. The teacher's response was that he was fine and could be given extra work if he's bored. How does that impact his transcript? I hold a role that oversees college acceptance. Students can be penalized if their high school offers numerous AP opportunities, but the students don't complete significant AP courses during their junior and senior years. 204 high schools offer many, and if certain groups are systematically discouraged from pursuing the AP track, we are disadvantaging them. I hate that I have to keep in mind that Black and Latinx applicants from 204 may not have been encouraged to take the honors and AP classes they could have been successful in. This is a request to review the manner in which course placement occurs, Review the process by which parents request changes so that it's less intimidating. And review the manner in which student performance is monitored throughout their courses so movement to the appropriate level is possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gina. And our last speaker to non-agenda items is David Kay. Welcome, David.
Thank you. My name is David Kalina. I'm a Georgetown elementary teacher and a Hill Middle School parent. I would like to comment regarding the concept of the district mission paired with communication to the greater community. The district's mission is to inspire all students to achieve their greatest potential. The board, administration, teachers, and parents are partners in the success of this mission. With this mission in mind, and with the additional parameters of this fall's learning environment, I recognize that my communication to families needs to improve, and it needs to be focused on how to partner for success, and it needs to be a continuous open door environment. I will need to find out information from families such as what can I do to improve their odds of succeeding in this mission? What challenges do they have? And what else do they need? And I need to figure out how can I avoid implementing something that would hamper their role. With respect to district communication, as a teacher, a key partner who is tasked with building the bridge between the students and their learning, I have come to the decision that I must make a request of the administration, and my appeal is that the communication to staff be improved so that it is timely, considers multiple perspectives, and involves opportunities for a relatively equal exchange of concerns and ideas. This communication should be a continuous back and forth instead of just a surface level surveys, 3 minutes to share your comment on a proposal to which you have no access, or a data dump as the board meeting approaches. When I deployed to Iraq, information had to be guarded so it did not fall into enemy hands. But there is no enemy in this situation. Certainly not the teachers, and definitely not the families. Please open this communication so that we don't feel like adversaries and instead can assist in the mission to which we all agree, helping our students, our kids, achieve their greatest potential. Thank you for your time, and hopefully my 3 minutes was spent wisely and helps in some way. Respectfully, David Kalina.
Thank you, David. We now move to our consent agenda and superintendent report. Traditionally, we always start with the superintendent report. Dr. Talley.
Thank you, Mike. Members of the board and members of the Indian Prairie community, I want to start my comments tonight by remembering two people who were part of the Indian Prairie family who passed away recently. Miss Carrie Janzak was a TA at Owen. She was 58 years old. Mr. Charles Seidel passed away on July 28th in Estero, Florida. He was 74. He was principal of Brookdale for 17 years. We want to let their families know how much we appreciate their service to Indian Prairie and hope their memories of their loved ones will comfort them. Some highlights I would like to discuss that have taken place or are in process of taking place. We have been offering various professional development opportunities to our teachers. We had 22 new teachers take a 20-hour class on online learning. In the class, the teachers learned about the quality online teaching and the various components of quality online instruction. We are pleased that these teachers took this class and are ready to use their skills when we start remotely. New teacher orientation begins tomorrow and will run for 3 days. We have approximately 80 people who are starting in Indian Prairie for the first time. Some of these people are brand new to teaching. Others of them are new to our district that come with experience. We are excited for these new employees and look forward to what they bring to our district. Our training will be remote with the new teachers going to their schools. Over the next 3 days, I'm hoping to visit as many of these new teachers as possible and welcome them to the community. Our community members living around the 3 high schools might be hearing the dulcet tones of our coming out from the instruments of our marching band students. Band camp is upon us. On August 3rd, members of the Marching Warriors student leadership team returned to school in preparation for this year's band camp. Our Marching Mustangs began their return on August 6th, and the Marching Wildcats returned today. Though we are dealing with COVID-19, we're trying to keep some programs happening with modifications. And Mr. Wayne Hartman of Neuqua Valley High School was recently recognized as one of the top 5 driver education teachers in the country by the American Driver and Traffic Safety Education Association and the National Road Safety Foundation. He has been at Neuqua Valley for the past 21 years. We congratulate him on his award and thank him for his dedication to our students. Because I know we have a lot more to say later about reopening, I will end my comments here and will speak again when we present our opening plans. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Dr. Talley. We now move to our consent agenda. Approval, please identify yourself as you make your motion or second. I need a motion for the approval of the consent agenda items D through I as presented.
So this is Lori Donahue. I move that the board approve consent agenda items D through I.
There is a motion. Do I have a second?
This is Susan Deming. I'll second.
There is a motion second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Jeannie, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Mr. Karubis,
Yes.
Mr. Razak,
Aye.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Peel,
Aye.
and Mr. Rising.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0. We now move to public comment for agenda items. Again, as policy dictates, 30 minutes is allowed for public comment. And again, each person is limited to 3 minutes. We again ask you to respect the confidentiality and safety of our students. Again, this is an open meeting and ask that you respect and consider who the audience members are this evening. Again, public comment represents the voice and the opinion of the speaker. Again, no feedback from board members during the meeting, but follow-up will be provided by an administrator as appropriate. Our first speaker is VJP.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. Thank you to the board members and leadership for all the work you are doing to keep us safe. I do understand and respect differing opinions from the callers from last week. The decision to open schools with remote learning may not be favorable to all the stakeholders, but is a prudent and rational one, given the rising number of COVID cases, the risk to already strained staffing and funding challenges that comes with separate online academy. As you know, many neighboring school districts, including CPS, are starting with remote learning. And then there are many more examples. I have 3 points to make. First, although we do expect a stable start with remote learning, that does increase the need for more pre-planning in coming months. All students can start the school year with the classes they desire, but we will count on your leadership to make sure all the classes will be available through all the options, should there be a need to provide different options in November. Starting school with remote learning should not become a trap I repeat, should not become a trap that will make it impossible to continue school year if all classes are not offered through online in November. Failure to do so will result in either lower grades or unfortunate decisions for some of the students to take a gap for the year for any reason, such as comorbidity. Second, if the hybrid option becomes feasible in November, I would recommend a phased approach, where initially you can bring in a small number of students and staff, especially those who want hybrid or in-person options, and then ramp up slowly to sustainable levels in compliance with COVID guidelines in place at that time. Third, if you would like to take any future surveys, please do that through Parent View, where each family will get one vote instead of relying on survey system that may be easily manipulated. Inconsistencies between prior survey results showing only 25% families favoring online versus actual 45% online registration show clear disconnect. Hope you will consider these recommendations seriously, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Vijay. Our next speaker is Ron O.
Good evening. As a parent, many of us are concerned about their child during the pandemic. This virus is not a hoax, it is real. I thank the board for all their efforts to keep the kids and the staff safe. Teachers and school workers have families. They want to keep their families safe just like the parents do. All the concerns parents have are shared by teachers, and they want a safe school for everyone, including themselves. Is it fair to send a teacher into a classroom during a pandemic who has a pre-existing condition? The answer is no in any profession. Teachers deserve the same respect the kids get. During this pandemic, I think many people have forgotten that point, and I wanted to remind the board and everyone else. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you, Ron. Our next speaker is Phil M.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm not really one to usually call into these kind of meetings or do this sort of thing, but I saw the survey that came out that you kind of cited some numbers and talked about the reason for kind of going to full virtual learning for a while here, and calling to kind of express my disappointment in that shift. I mean, I know there's a lot of fear going around. Everyone's kind of doing their best to make the right decision. I support our teachers. I know they're working hard. I know everybody's doing what they need to do here, but you know, a careful examination of the facts here shows that this is probably the wrong decision. I mean, CDC guidelines are out. They show that this is far less dangerous than a common flu to school-age kids. More and more evidence coming out that shows kids aren't meaningful spreaders to this thing. It would seem a much more sensible approach to protect the vulnerable, make special accommodations for any teachers or students that might have high-risk people, and let the other people get back to doing what they do best, which is giving our kids a great education. I mean, we know the vast negative risk associated with eliminating in-person schooling, including not only the near certain unacceptable educational outcomes, but also the social and emotional setbacks our children are suffering, which is well documented by child psychologists, corroborated by data we're seeing in overdose and suicides and things like that across the state. And then I look at the survey results and I see that, if I'm reading it right, 76% of parents and 78% of teachers, it wasn't their first choice. I mean, these are massive majorities, so I wonder why that's the case. If parents didn't want it and teachers didn't want it. I don't know if it was pressure or worry about lawsuits or just fear winning over rationality, but the board needs to find the courage to do the right thing. And the saddest thing here is that a lot of parents don't have any recourse. You know, if we try to refuse payment as we would for other organizations that aren't providing a service level we want, we could do that in a private situation, but here, you know, you guys could come take my house from me in theory. So that money that you're taking coercively, you know, precludes me from sending my daughter to a private school where she could receive the education that I think she needs. So long shot here, but I'm asking that the board consider providing a refund voucher for substantially all the tax dollars taken from parents who wish to provide their children with the education that the district won't provide. I think it's the morally right thing to do to allow us to pursue better quality options, or at least compensate for the additional burden you put on working parents. And if this message is resonating with any parents or teachers out there, please get in contact with me. Maybe we could do something to do some positive change. Think about homeschool co-ops or something that we could do to ease the pressure on each other, but give our kids a little bit better chance to succeed here and have the socialization they need, especially the younger kids like my own, where the early education, the social stuff is just so important. So it's PHIL_MCALISTER@yahoo.com, Phil_McAllister@yahoo.com. Let's try to put our heads together here and affect some positive change and maybe have an impact on the next elections when it comes to it. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Phil. Our next speaker is Katie P.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Sally. Thank you for your continuous focus on the safety and success of all our students and staff. Please know your dedication and effort during this unprecedented time is appreciated. My name is Katie Pop, and I'm the president of the Indian Prairie Education Association. It is my honor and privilege to represent the 2,000 educators that make up our association. I am also a history teacher, and at this time, I think it's important to understand the history of the relationship between the association and the district. We pride ourselves on the fact that we operate in the best interest of students and staff, and we accomplish this by attacking the problem and not each other. This is a district that strives to provide educators with the support they need to be great at what they do. Our outstanding faculty works hard to encourage purposeful learning and develop positive relationships with each other and with other students. As a result, among other things, our students go on to be Olympic athletes, government officials, healthcare workers, first responders, artists, and teachers. Those successes are attainable because of the experience students have in our school district, and those experiences are shaped by us, the teachers. A third of our association is like myself, a graduate of District 204. To say that the start of this school year for all of our students will be different is an understatement. But we have an outstanding staff members who continually prove that they are student-centered and know that building relationships, exhibiting genuine caring for students, and having high expectations of every student leads to exceptional learning and their long-term success. I believe in the teachers and the administrators of our district, and with your continued focus on the safety and success of students and staff, I know as we continue to address this current challenge together, we can and will inspire all students to achieve their greatest potential. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Katie. Our next speaker is Mary Z.
After listening to the public comments of the board meeting last week, I felt compelled to speak this week as I'm hearing Katie Pop prior to me. So Katie, I was glad to hear your voice. Thank you for allowing me to address the board and the community this evening. My name is Mary Zalabak, and I have the unique opportunity of experiencing this time from the perspective as both an educator in the district and as a parent of 20 years in the district. The only thing that can be said right now with any certainty is that there is very little certainty during these times. But I do know a few things for certain that I would like to share with the community. First and foremost, educators and support staff in this district want nothing more than the best for our students. And we want to be with our students in person, in school, and we want to do that safely. Second, I know that the administration, the board, and our union have been working tirelessly to navigate this challenging situation to find solutions that will keep our students, staff, and community safe while delivering the exceptional educational experiences and rigor associated with District 204. And third, I know that no matter what the return to school plan is, there will always be people who disagree with or are disappointed with the solution presented. Speaking honestly for myself, and I believe for many other educators, online learning in the spring was uncharted territory for us all. It was stressful and challenging for us and our students and their families. We all did our best to meet the many needs of our students while balancing our own lives. I'm a self-contained teacher at Young Elementary, and I was very proud of the work the entire team at Young did to provide virtual opportunities to meet not only the academic, but also the social, emotional, and behavioral needs of our diverse community. Fast forward to summer, and in true educator fashion, we have been using our summer, including our Saturdays and Sundays, learning new vocabulary like synchronous and asynchronous, attending virtual webinars to learn new online platforms, creating engaging virtual classrooms, and reworking our curriculum and programs in preparation for what the new school year will look like. With the support of our community, administration, and board, we are ready to face the new challenges the school year may bring head on. And I have never been prouder to be an educator. As we look to what is ahead, I'd like to encourage the board and the administration to continue to follow the science and data and to keep safety in the forefront of our district's plan. Thank you for always viewing it as a fluid situation that may require different options to meet the needs of all of our learners, especially the most vulnerable of our community. And I agreed with Mr. Rising last week when he stated that this is not a situation that can be given a one-size-fits-all solution. In closing, I'd like to add one more thing that I know for certain. The only way we can come through this is together. Recognizing that during these unprecedented times, everyone needs a little grace and understanding, I am hopeful that our school community can come together and have a positive and successful start to the school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And our final speaker is Kagan A.
Hi, this is Kanagon. Actually, I have a question regarding for the middle school PA program. We are getting some conflicting information, and we would like to our district to make it clear because our middle school PA student parent that we kind of get information that there will be no longer special teams for the PA programs, and they are going to combine with the regular classes. However, we are not sure that which teachers are going to teach those PA classes, or there will be a mix and match of the students. We would like to get some clear information from the district and then focus on that subject also, that because the PA program students need special teachers, and we would like to have the actually experienced PA teachers to teach those classes for those teams, even if you basically alienate, the special PA teams. That's my kind of a concern for this point. For the actual online versus the mix, the options that you eliminated already, my suggestion was that basically your teachers can teach both classes at the same time, and when the vaccination or the drugs are available, then you can basically switch for those students to basically in class gradually. That one of our speakers also mentioned about it. And then that way that you can basically use your resources carefully, and then you can support, the both in class and online students. That's my kind of a comment at this point. I would like to thank you for your concerns and your comments. Thank you. This is Kanagun. Bye.
Thank you so much. And now we do move to our discussion item. Last week, we had the opportunity to hear part one of the opening of schools. We are now continuing to share our plans and discussing the opening plans for the 2021 school year. Dr. Talley.
Thank you, Mike. Members of the board, Indian Prairie community, tonight we will have part two of our reopening plan. At our August 3rd meeting, we shared with you our plan to start the new year off fully remote. As we said then and continue to say now, there were a myriad of factors that led me to make that decision. One of those reasons was our belief that a bifurcated plan would not allow us to ensure the rigor of our program that our children are used to having and that our teachers give. Tonight, you will learn more about what a day in the life of a student is with this fully remote plan. You will see the schedule for students at all levels and hear why these plans will support our students' social emotional needs and academic needs. At all levels, we are focused on rigor and relationships. We know the importance of establishing and maintaining relationships with the students and families. We must make inroads to all students, and especially students who are having difficulties with the online format. I think what you will hear tonight will address that need. You will also hear about rigor through the discussion about how many minutes our teachers will have live or synchronous with our students. We received a lot of emails and comments about the need for the fall to look different than the spring. I am almost certain you will see that difference tonight. At all levels, principals have been talking about almost nonstop about how they want to ensure there is support for parents, students, and teachers. Our administrators have high expectations for what is produced this year. Likewise, our teachers are also focused on delivering stellar work for our children. Our teachers know what this year is going to be different, but they also know that they have the skill and the will to reach our children and ensure their success. As I continue to talk with staff, my mantra is fidelity of teaching across all classrooms and grade levels, as well as high expectations for our students. Finally, before I turn this over to our deputy, I want to add that even though we are presenting our plan tonight, our plan is not necessarily finished. In the effort of continuous improvement, we will continue to re-examine our plan, tweak things here and there, and add more clarity where necessary. We have a few weeks before the start of the school year, and we are striving to ensure that we start off correctly serving our children and our community. One last thing, I'm going to embarrass our deputy, but I think it's important. Today and yesterday, he was taking his daughter to Boston for college, but he wanted to be here tonight for this presentation. So just like Charles Kuralt being on the road, our deputy is also on the road. And I really want to commend him for his commitment and dedication for being here tonight when he did not have to be. And so I'm going to now turn it over to Mr. Akarius, who will lead us through the discussion tonight.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Talley. I was not expecting that. And thank you to the board for allowing us to continue to present to you the planning that we've been doing to reopen for the start of the 2021 school year. We're very excited to be following up with you and the community on this plan. This evening, I will be joined by Laura Rosenblum, Brad Hillman, Linda Rakestraw, and Christina Sepiel, who will also all present on different parts of this plan. As we indicated last week, this second part of our plan was designed to go into much more detail about what people can expect this school year to look like or to start with in the remote setting. The schedules that you'll see this evening are kind of samples of what you can expect it to look like for our students as well as our staff. So with that, I'm going to move on to the presentation. In the beginning of this presentation, it's just a little bit of a recap of from last week and kind of what's been guiding us. So next slide, please. Our return to school goal since June has been to support a comprehensive educational program for the 2021 school year within the current guidelines provided by local, state, and federal health and safety officials. And we do feel like every committee, we've made sure that that goal was present as we continue to work through how we would meet the needs of our students. Next slide. In June, we talked about that process of creating a plan, validating the plan, and then monitoring and modifying, which is, as Dr. Talley said, we're going to continue to look at our plan and to do the best we can to meet the needs of our students. Next slide, please. At the center of our framework is public health. And within that, we had to focus on instructional core and SEL, operations, stakeholder communication, and resources. Next slide, please. Within each of those areas, we've had to look at what's going to impact and what's going to drive us. We continue to come back and revisit our framework to make sure that we're looking at our plan from each of these different areas. Next slide, please. We talked about operating at a given time. We are in phase 4, which is revitalization. One of the things, one of the benefits of starting in the remote learning environment is if the state does reduce to phase 3, we're already prepared because we would be going to remote at that point in time anyway. And so under our current plan, even if the state does change phases, we can still continue forward and know exactly what we're going to be doing to meet student needs. We have talked about, and you'll see in this plan, we talk more about bringing in small groups of students or students one-on-one. Obviously, depending if those phases change, those are some things that we'll have to make sure that we're looking at to see, are we keeping all students and staff as safe as possible? Next slide. We did talk about the beginning of the year, so we just wanted to communicate to you. We originally had Opening Institute Day was going to be on the 17th. We did ask and propose that we extend to the start of the school year, postpone that to the 3rd for students. And so what our new calendar would look like would be Opening Institute Day on the 26th, Building Institute Day on the 27th, our Teacher Work Day on the 28th, and then we have 3 additional remote planning days to ensure that we are fully prepared to start in the remote learning environment and to be successful in the remote learning environment. And then our students would start on September 3rd. Next slide, please. At the last board meeting, we talked about how is this going to look different. We've heard and we know our teachers, our parents, our students weren't satisfied with what online learning looked like and what remote learning looked like when we had to close all of a sudden back in March. And so we really wanted to emphasize how things will look different in the fall. We talked about differences in goals. At that time, we were really trying. People were scared, were confused, and we wanted to just keep people connected and then continue to try to cover material and help them be prepared to move forward. We know starting this school year, we want to provide a robust, cohesive, high-quality instruction across content areas, maintaining routines and relationships, and providing cohesive, aligned instruction, mirroring in-person learning as closely as possible, but in a virtual setting. We talked about attendance, grading, and feedback. At that time, attendance was encouraged. Students could not get grades lower than where they ended on March 13th. And so we know that that is also going to be different, and is that going to help engagement. Attendance will be submitted daily. Tasks and assignments will be required. Students will be assessed on their progress and will be given feedback, and participation will be required. Next slide, please. Our schedule is in return to school. We will have a blend of synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous instruction will be interactive, include whole group, small group, and individual. There will be an average about 2.5 hours at least every day of synchronous or live instruction. All content areas taught, including direct instruction on digital citizenship and use of tech tools, and consistent check-ins and increased opportunities with protocols for feedback and individual support. We know and want to be checking in with our students and families regularly. As part of this, we've also added additional technology devices for our students so that our students at KM1 will also have devices. We're also looking at how we can support obviously as many students as possible with devices, but also with hotspots to make sure that all of our students can be connected. Next slide, please. Preparation. We know we switched on a dime to remote learning in the March. And so as you've heard, our teachers have been focused on learning as much as they can for a remote environment to be as successful as possible and to support students as much as possible. We're looking at how do we build relationships in a virtual environment. We look at our culturally relevant teaching, and we look at other technology tools that will help us be successful in this different environment. It will look different, but we know that we're going to be there to support our students and to help them continue on their academic journey. We're also going to be providing opportunities for Google Classroom, as well as a system in Synergy that can help be a great communication tool for both students and parents and to enhance engagement. Next slide, please. You're going to see throughout the schedules that instead of using the word synchronous, we're going to use the word live, because essentially that's what we mean with that. So learning is an approach. where teachers and students are online at the same time. The teacher provides learning at a set time. It can happen in small or large group offerings. It might be live mini lessons, small group work, immediate feedback from the teacher, SEL check-ins, or class discussions. And then asynchronous is more of what we have associated with independent. It's where teachers and students are not online at the same time, but the teacher provides learning resources and tasks so students can access at any time. Once again, student agency. This is where the student has control over the pace, the time, the place. These might be pre-recorded videos, formative assessments, choice boards and or playlists, pre-reading assignments, writing prompts, or project-based learning. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to move into our different schedules by our different levels of students. So first, to talk about both preschool and then on to elementary, will be our assistant superintendent for learning at the elementary level, Laura Rosenblum.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to share the preschool schedule with you this evening. To help our earliest learners achieve the early learning outcomes, each family will be provided with weekly activities and plans to facilitate learning experiences in their home setting that's aligned to our curriculum. Please advance the slide. As you can see from the schedule, students will participate in a variety of play-based activities to support their growth in literacy, math, fine and gross motor skills, discovery science, and social emotional learning. The activities are hands-on and interactive to engage our earliest learners. Parents will have a choice of activities to complete during the week from choice boards related to developmental domain areas. A few small examples for literacy and language, vocabulary visuals will be given to parents so they can help their child practice at home, for example, related to their first unit of study, which is all about me. It also would include essential questions similar to, have your child identify the color of their eyes. What color are everyone's eyes in the family? Are they the same or different? So already helping students develop those language skills and that compare and contrast ability. In addition, we might ask questions that would support math. Count how many family members have different color eyes. In addition, our earliest learners will have activities where they get to play and they get to participate in drama. So there will be scripts that might be related to being a community helper. They might be someone working at the grocery store or a doctor's office or a post office. We also know the importance of social emotional learning for our youngest learners. We will be providing handouts from our past program that'll include parent notes and extension activities. The main focus is on feelings and what to do when a child has strong emotions. The child will be able to label their emotions, act out their emotions, and even draw a face to indicate their emotions. Each week, staff will send the information home to families. Staff will also spend time during the week connecting with families to provide coaching and support. Building relationships with our families is very important and will occur throughout the week. IEP meetings will continue to be held virtually. A remote learning plan will be developed for each IEP student. And on a case-by-case basis, students with significant challenges may receive instruction or related services at a scheduled time in person during the week. For our elementary schedule, you will see that our model is slightly different than that of our secondary levels. However, the focus does remain on relationships, routines, and rigor. We want to help students set organizational processes and establish routines that are easy to follow. Children at the elementary level benefit from shorter instructional time than older students, given their attention spans and abilities to sit for extended periods of time. We know that the attention span of our kindergartners is different from even our fifth graders. Just like during in-person instruction, teachers will take into account the engagement level of students and adjust accordingly. In addition, they will work to build stamina. At the beginning of a typical year, we know that we have to build stamina for our students, whether it be the stamina to learn during a whole group lesson or the stamina to read independently for longer and longer periods of time. We will start slow and work to build their stamina based on their age. The schedule we're sharing today is what we will be working toward, and teachers will be mindful of the balance between learning with screen time and learning without screen time.
Could we see the schedule for the elementary? Okay.
Next slide, please. You can go, there you go. Like the two other levels, we will be starting and ending our remote learning day with opportunities for student support and assistance. Each day we begin with daily meetings focused on addressing the social and emotional needs of our students. Each student attendance day will close with a class meeting and wrap up. This time will provide students opportunities to ask questions, clarify assignments, review and reflect on topics from the day. Starting and ending each day with live staff student time will allow for them to form and foster the strong relationships needed to ensure success for our students. We know that one advantage we did have last spring was that students already knew their classmates and their teacher. We will be devoting time at the beginning of the year, like we always do, to build relationships among students and teachers with their students. The twist, of course, is doing it remotely. Fortunately, our teachers are very creative and already have many great ideas. We will also continue to offer professional development for staff in this area, as we know that relationships are the sine qua non. They are the essential ingredient for the work we do. We want to build a community of learners remotely like we've done in person. Connecting with our families is also important. Students will have an hour for lunch, teachers will have 35 minutes. This provides time for teachers to connect with families, whether it's through responding to emails, answering questions, or making phone calls. And this could extend to students if they needed additional support as well. You'll notice that the elementary schedule mirrors that of our traditional model. With younger students, the content can be provided in shorter class periods. We felt that aligning our remote schedule with our traditional one would make a transition back easier for young students. A team of teachers did an amazing job working throughout the summer to develop this schedule, as well as many resources and supports to assist teachers in their remote instruction. When we think about rigor and content, we know that students make the most growth when we provide a variety of learning experiences. We start with high quality instruction of our essential outcomes delivered during whole class instruction. For example, in language arts, we might be teaching students about main idea in detail. To accelerate the learning for all students, we follow up with small group guided instruction. During this time, our staff meets with smaller groups of students to provide additional support to the students who are having difficulty with main idea, or to provide additional challenge for students who have a solid understanding. Our teachers have learned a lot about the power of remote small group instruction this summer when working with our at-risk kindergarten and first graders. Our attendance rate for this program were much higher than in our spring during remote learning. Students really like the small group meetings, so much so that they even had their parents leave their vacation rental to go to Starbucks where it was quiet and they could get on Wi-Fi so they didn't miss their guided group. And they actually did that twice during the week. So we, of course, want all of our students to experience this enthusiasm. Classroom teachers and support staff will be publishing schedules for whole group and small group instruction so families can plan accordingly. This format will be used for English language arts and math acceleration. The classes will be taught live for approximately 40 minutes of the hour. Part of the time will be used for whole group instruction to teach the concept, but then followed up by small group or independent work on a rotating basis. The whole group and small group instruction will allow for the rigor, while the independent time will provide students the opportunity to practice skills and review. Specials, I know many of my students, it was the favorite part of their week, but we do know that elementary art, music, and PE programs play an important part in the education of the whole child and are key to the early formation of many portrait of a graduate competencies. Our elementary specialist teachers are developing learning activities that keep students physically active and creative during remote learning. They are looking forward to providing a variety of experiences to students that include both live and independent learning. Lessons will be constructed in ways that allow for both teacher-led instruction and hands-on practice. Art, music, and PE students will continue to build their skills and receive feedback on their work during remote learning. Intervention and enrichment groups. The secondary levels are planning on a wide variety of intervention, enrichment, and support work to take place each Monday. At the elementary level, we've decided to provide these supports on a daily basis to our students for an hour each day. Part of the time will be live and part will be independent practice. This provides dedicated time for classroom teachers as well as a variety of specialists to meet with groups of children, whether that's a special services teacher, a reading interventionist, an EL teacher, or Project Arrow teacher. It gives all those specialists an opportunity to connect and work with students in small groups. I do want to highlight that this schedule is a sample schedule. Students will have the same time allocations, but might have them earlier in the day or later in the day. As you can imagine, if we had all students having specials at 10:30, that would be a lot of students on Zoom at one time. So we, of course, need to stagger the schedules for each grade level to allow for specials and specialists to be able to support students at a variety of grade levels. At all of the levels, the schools will be assessing opportunities to bring individual or small groups of students in the school for enrichment and intervention activities. As you heard from Mr. Akarius, protocols are being developed that will outline the safety measures, but that is something that we plan to do in the future. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight Mondays. On Mondays, we will include a minimum of 2 hours of professional development and professional learning time for our staff each week. And we do believe that this time is imperative. This was another takeaway from our summer engagement teachers. Our teachers want to plan amazing lessons for whole and small groups. And as they did that this summer, they were very strategic as they planned their lessons so that the instruction was specific for that group of students, as well as prioritized to maximize the time with the small group. This type of planning took time, even in a traditional school day and setting. But as you know, we now have a whole nother layer to make it just as engaging in a remote format. As mentioned, our teachers have been working hard all spring and all summer to work on the technology and be savvy, but it does take additional time for them to turn it into Google Classroom and to use the Chromebook and to use Zoom. So we know our teachers are absolutely up for the challenge and have been working hard, but they will be participating in professional development on Mondays as well as before and after school. Next, you will get to learn more about our secondary level schedules.
I did have a quick question. I think we missed the kindergarten, or is it under? Is the kindergarten following the elementary school schedule?
Yeah, kindergarten is following the elementary, but as you were saying, like, we know that their attention span is much shorter, and we know that their activities are going to need to be even more interactive. So teachers are really working on developing and designing that. And like we said, like, we'll grow into this schedule. We know that our 5-year-olds won't have the stamina yet, but we are going to be developing that. That'll be our goal.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Talley. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board on behalf of the middle schools and the middle school principals. I greatly appreciate it. Our schedule was also created with a strong commitment to rigor, routines, relationships, and student engagement. We feel this schedule will allow us to meet the needs of our students using a model that provides significant time for content delivery, ample opportunities for engaged and independent learning, and a significant time for enrichment and intervention. The schedule design includes the following. We have scheduled block classes on Tuesday through Friday. The blocks have 45 minutes of live instruction, immediately followed by 25 minutes of independent learning time. It also has a dedicated lunch period for all staff and students at the exact same time. And finally, on Wednesdays and Fridays, we have a dedicated advisory time. We believe the benefits of this in that it allows us significant time to deliver content and engage with students for an extended length of time instead of much smaller blocks. It provides the opportunity for deeper discussions, more engaged learning activities, and a better development of student and teacher relationships. And finally, our plan offers extended time for independent learning at the end of each period, which allows for students to practice skills, check for understanding, and further engage with their learning. Several features on the next slide we're going to point out are on Mondays. We are utilizing our Mondays in a different fashion. When we were designing our blended learning plan, Mondays were going to be a remote learning day for all students. During the planning for this day, we really focused on ensuring each student was set up for success for the upcoming week. This plan focused on quick check-ins, reminders of work that was going to be due, expectations for participation, and best practices in being a student during blended remote learning. We liked the idea so much that we made it a part of our remote learning plan. Core time is going to be an opportunity for the entire middle school team to come together and check in for the upcoming week, preview the week ahead, and build buy-in for being associated with a specific middle school team. Encore time is an opportunity for Encore teachers to really focus on finalizing projects, starting new projects and explaining them, reviewing upcoming key dates, and building relationships necessary to keep students engaged. And then our enrichment and intervention time is just that. We want to enrich or extend the learning and content areas for those students who are ready for it. And we wanted an opportunity to reteach previously covered material or preview upcoming material for students who need this to be successful. This is also a time for service delivery for some of our special education students to ensure that they are getting the support they need and are entitled to. And finally, for the student day, we have personalized learning. In education, we always talk about we want students to take control of their own learning, but sometimes we don't build that time into our day. In this period, we will allow students to explore their own passions and encourage creativity for both students and staff in that exploration. It will truly provide a choice for students in what they learn during a set period of time during the school day. Also on Monday, not student-based, but just as equally important, we have set aside PLC time and professional development time for teachers in the back half of the day. This is something that, as Mrs. Rosenblum mentioned, is something that we have learned from previous online experiences that our teachers really do need that, and they value that, and they thrive in that environment. So we wanted to provide that to them inside the schedule. When we come to the Tuesday through Friday part of our schedule, homeroom is a period that we're going to be starting each day with. It is a time that we're going to go over learning expectations, listen to and or watch the daily announcements that we're going to continue through the school. Additionally, this time will allow some buffer time to solve connectivity issues prior to starting that first instructional day or first instructional period. Finally, middle school students often struggle with executive functioning. This time will be valuable in making sure that students are prepared for their day of learning at home. I mentioned advisory previously. The middle schools have been utilizing the Second Step program for several years. Second Step is a social emotional learning program that caters to the challenges that middle school students face. Previously, we have tried to either integrate this program into other classes or carve out time in the bell schedule for it. This time, we simply have decided to dedicate a predictable, structured time for social emotional learning utilizing the Second Step program. In order to meet the needs of individual students, either one-on-one or in small groups, we have also built that time into the schedule in various places. We know that most of our students will embrace remote learning head-on and be very successful. However, we also know that some students need a little bit more attention when it comes to accountability. I would have been one of those students. Principals are going to be working with their instructional leadership teams to ensure that all students are accounted for and engaged. They are creating additional layers of support to provide attention to students who need it. This type of wraparound service will be more intense and targeted beyond the classroom teacher. We will be utilizing administrators, counselors, interventionists, and all other staff that we can find to layer supports for students who need it most. We want to ensure that all students are engaged and that we are reaching out to unengaged students during the middle of the school day, not waiting for a couple of days to go by. We want to utilize all staff that we can to reach out to students who are supposed to be engaged that day because their parents did not call them in sick, and find out why they are not participating and get them on board. We are also exploring ways to lower our student to teacher ratio for personal interaction. The goal with this is for each staff member to take an active role in connecting with a very small group of students to ensure connectedness to both the building and to the other students that are going to be within their group. This can take place during homeroom, lunchtime, or any other place during our Monday schedule. Finally, when we were developing our schedule, we wanted to address the idea of accountability. By having a set and defined schedule, we are providing a built-in accountability so that all students and staff know what is expected of them. The schedule allows all parents to know exactly when their students are to be online and with what subject areas. It also allows us to make sure that we are able to provide the services that our at-risk students truly need. Finally, in summary, I am truly excited to see how the middle school principals and teachers are going to embrace remote learning by prioritizing student engagement, prioritizing academic rigor, and showing compassion for families and students as they overcome the challenges of working in a remote setting. I am quite proud of the work that is being done behind the scenes to make this become a reality, and I am very much looking forward to seeing it come to fruition. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to a face you all recognize, Linda Rakstra.
Linda, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute, but can you move the screen, please, to the high school? Thank you. Okay, I'm excited to be back. I'm glad to see people again, and I'm especially been excited to be working with such an outstanding group of high school leaders. They are truly a gifted group, and I'm really proud of them and the schedule they've created along with their staff. I'm going to go ahead and cover the highlights quickly, and then I kind of want to focus on the schedule itself as I go a little bit deeper into an explanation for you. Classes in this schedule are going to have 50 minutes of live instruction, 10 minutes of independent learning. Our staff connection time, which you're going to see on the schedule, allows for communications with parents, students, peers, professionals, counselors, and just a multitude of people. And our Mondays, we're really excited about the Mondays, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we're going to use these as opportunities to work with small groups and provide interventions, instruction, enrichment. They're going to be for students experiencing social emotional issues, academic challenges, some equity related problems, our homeless students. All of these are going to be considered on for special support and assistance on those days. We also want to use that time for college and test preparation, career counseling, and extended classroom projects, labs, and special activities. And we will also have professional learning, community, and professional development opportunities for our staff on that day. Could you please go ahead to the next slide? Okay, I want to talk about this schedule. Like the other levels, we had a strong commitment to looking at rigor, routines, relationships, and also to focus on the portrait of a graduate. We're very confident that this schedule is going to give us the opportunity to inspire and challenge our students to reach their highest potential. This block schedule that you're looking at prioritizes the blocks to support organization, engagement, and attendance. It provides for live instruction where we can foster discussions, relationships, and feedback. It defines very specific times for individual or small group and student support. And it also supports our professional learning communities and professional development for our staff. Now, I know you've looked at probably a lot of different models, as have we. You've seen block schedules with maybe big chunks of passing time in between or break time. And you may have seen schedules that have the full class offerings listed every day where the periods are cut in half. We did not choose any of those. Our schedule design is very intentional. It's research-based, and it was created with a strong commitment to rigor. The schedule that we have offers block classes. I'll look at that section first. Tuesdays through Fridays, featuring a full 50 minutes of live teaching and 10 minutes at the end of independent planning and prep time. These days, each day also features planning and preparation teacher connection time, both at the beginning and the ending of every single day. This design is going to allow us the opportunity for students to practice with new information, and for teachers to connect and make contact with the students and to provide assistance. The independent staff connection periods are going to be very important in providing opportunities for questions, contacts, support, guidance, and for check-ins to take place. One of the models that we could have shown you would be all of our classes listed with the time split. We definitely decided not to use that model because of the format and the way that our teaching and instructional practices are. We know that if we split a 50 or even 60-minute period in half, part live and part independent, we would never be able to do some of the depth that we typically do in our classrooms. Our STEM classes and our FACS classes and others require longer class periods for content delivery. We want to be able to do lab work and to do project work. I mean, we have teachers already trying to visualize how they can add depth and breadth to their classes, things like walking out to the prairie and doing projects out there for their classes. And research has told us that the remote learning requires daily opportunities for staff and student contact and communication. So we've embedded that into every single day, Tuesday through Friday. We really thought that the morning and at the end of the day check-ins and opportunities for kids to clarify, contact, communicate with their teachers was going to be important. Along with the research, our version of the block schedule has lots of supports and opportunities for assistance that make ours unique in many ways. The National Educational Association has told us that block scheduling provides students more time for reflection and more time for reflection and less information that they'd have to process over the course of a day. It also helps the students to be able to retain the information a little bit longer. Our longer instructional periods will allow for high expectations, strong staff support, and a commitment to reaching class goals for attainment that will align with past practices. I want to make this very clear. It is our intention to complete the same work assignments as we would in previous years. We plan to do this by very intentionally pacing our lessons and providing supports daily to assist students in reaching our objectives. We know that high school students also are a little more attentive, organized, and focused later in the morning. So our model allows for the early planning and preparation activities that take place first before the first instructional period should be helpful to them as well. If you look at our Mondays, we are really, really excited about our Mondays and the possibilities for that day. We plan to use our Mondays to provide small group support, instruction, and enrichment for our students who are at risk, who are in need of additional or targeted academic instruction, and for classes that are requiring educational experience or more enrichment opportunities than we could fit in during the week. Student assistance is also going to be provided remotely on these days at the start, but I'll be honest, our goal has always been and will be to try to bring small groups in as soon as it is feasible and safe to bring them into the building. We'd really like to start working with transitioning individuals and students back in, but we know that we have to make things as safe as possible for our students at the beginning, and we know that we can make that happen. Social emotional issues, equity-related problems, gender-related, homeless concerns, all of these things are going to be used in identifying students that we want to provide special services for. Our special education students will also receive assistance according to some of the guidelines established by their department in those days. And we've actually gone so far as we are developing academic support teams for those days. We're going to have deans on the group, school counselors, social workers, our mental health coordinators. We'll have an administrator from each class house. We'll have some faculty on these teams, including the LMC directors. And the goal is to support students with resources, engagement, course content, and technical support in groups of less than 10. Students will also be included that are identified as at risk for some of the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And we also want students who've been, in the event that we are able to bring them in on those days, we're going to have them identified early enough too that we can work through the safety protocols to make that happen. Individual and small group contacts, interventions, enrichment support, and extracurricular activities will be provided. We know it's important too, for our high school students, we need to do some career counseling. We need to do some college prep assistance. We have students that are filling out applications or writing essays or need to compile all their work for college or for whatever avenue they're taking after high school. We're hoping that this will allow us some time to work with those students individually. We also want to help with some test prep. And we're also hoping to offer some extracurricular activities on these days. We recognize the importance of giving our high school students the opportunity to feel connected to the school, to other students, and to our programs. They need to be able to participate in some traditional high school experiences that might be offered outside that typical classroom setting to get their full high school experience. Also, we want to target our students who are at risk of dropping out or failing. We already know there are several students who have contracts, several students who are at risk of failing at this time. We have a lot of them identified, and we really want an opportunity to get to work with them and provide some more independent instruction. We plan to have high expectations this year. Our grades will be awarded using the district's traditional grading practices. Department chairs and building administrators will set high expectations for our staff. They're going to monitor some of the activities, provide feedback. And as we mentioned several times, our schedule is going to be reviewed and it's going to be evaluated. As I close, I'd like to leave you with 4 C's, because I know we've heard some questions about our schedules. All of us have at all of the levels. And something I hope that I've addressed, or 4 things I hope I've addressed as I've gone through this. Content. Please know that we plan to be very purposeful in pacing our classes, in providing supports and academic assistance outside the live classrooms as well as within, so that we can meet our traditional quarterly goals and objectives. Communications. People want to know, how are we going to contact the staff? When are we going to be able to get hold of somebody if we have a question or a concern? Our staff in this schedule is going to be available for parent and student contacts at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, and intermittently throughout the schedule, as well as on Mondays. Connections. It's important for high school students to feel connected to their school, that sense of belonging, and as much of a full high school experience as we can give them, we want to do. That's where our Mondays are going to come in, where we can hope to give them a little bit more involvement in activities and engagements other than just academic related ones. And then constant review, as we've mentioned before, any work that's worth anything will be looked at and reviewed. And I'd be more than happy, as I know my peers would, to come back and talk about our schedules and about how they're, how effective they are and some of the highlights we see as we move along. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to see you all again. And I'll be happy to answer any questions later. I think I'm going to turn it over to Christina.
Good evening, board members. The last schedule to review this evening is the STEPS schedule highlights, and that is they're going to continue to provide the supports in the area of curriculum, communication, social skills, emotional regulation, and independent functioning. So nothing really has changed in that respect. Their overall goal is for the STEPS young adults to exit our school system with the skills that they need for independent living as much as possible. And so their schedule is purposeful around meeting their goals and their STEPS pathways, whether they are moving on toward a college experience or a work experience or other experiences that draw on their abilities to live as functioning and independent adults. If you could move to the next slide, please. So you'll notice that every day there is an SEL component. That Advisory Live is where the students connect with their staff members And it is a robust schedule from that point onward, where there are blocks according to their pathways of what they need to work on, whether that would be community, academics, independent living, vocational. And then you'll notice that on the Friday, that's IEP goal work. And what that means is that anything that the student was not able to perhaps work on or needed additional reinforcement through the week, that would be a time to work on that, perhaps in a one-to-one setting by Zoom. At this point, we are considering having students come in for the in-person scheduled sessions within the STEPS program. You'll see then from 11:30 to 1:15 is Teach Ton or Be Safe. Those are two curriculum resources that we've used throughout the spring. They were on a pilot and they were very successful. And so we plan on continuing those resources. And the PAYS Lab that I think most of you have been in, we will continue our work with the PAYS Lab and production. It may be that we have the school supply list look a little different so that we can have students have that same opportunity to continue with their production skills and with their work skills. Then you'll see that we spend a significant amount of time in social emotional learning related services. So physical therapy, occupational therapy, social work, services of that sort. And then the afternoon for professional learning. Our Fridays look a little bit different. Those are the days that when you see elective Friday, the students choose their particular interest, and then the staff lead out those interests, and those would be remote as well. So while our job sites have been suspended, our staff continue to work with students on community connections and skills they'll need for the future. And they have spent a long time, as all our staff have with the elementary, middle, and high, working on a schedule that is robust and purposeful in its intent. So that's all I have about STEPS at this time, but they're excited to start.
Great, thank you, Laura, Brad, Linda, and Christina. Next slide, please. I still want to address some other things that have come up and we've seen many questions on. One of those is student assessment. So for our national SAT testing dates, the optional Saturday testing dates on which 204 buildings host the administrative SAT, at this time we plan to offer these dates for students that have registered through College Board, obviously with safety protocols in place. For our preliminary SAT or PSAT or our National Merit Scholarship Quality Test, NMSQT, optional assessment for juniors to qualify for national merit recognition and scholarships. At this time, we plan to offer those for juniors on October 14th. The in-school SAT required by the state for graduation, we plan to offer the SAT to seniors that were not tested last spring on September 23rd with safety protocols in place. Results should be available to students around October 15th, and makeup dates will be offered later in the year for students unable to test. And then with our district assessments, we are still looking at some of those remote administration being explored for these assessments, including Ames, Web, and COGAT, to monitor progress and for program and course placement. Some assessments may be delayed until later in the year. Next slide, please. At our last meeting, we did talk about the opportunity to start trying to bring in students in person. At all levels, the schools will be assessing opportunities to bring individual or small groups of students in the school for learning activities. Protocols are being developed that will outline all safety measures that must be in place for this to occur. These will include groups will not exceed 10 people, including adults. Groups will be in for limited duration of time determined by the school, and that groups will not be mixing with other groups. Many of you have seen that recommendation through the CDC about cohort or pods of students, and that's really trying to keep the same groups of students together. In addition, when we look at bringing in students, can you go to the next slide, please? We want to assure parents that when we do this, as well as our staff and our community, that there are many things that we need to follow to make sure that we're trying to do our due diligence in keeping our students and staff safe. Cleaning and disinfecting all high-touch items, desks, door handles, restrooms, etc. will be disinfected each evening and throughout the day with all stakeholder support. Physical distancing, students and teachers must adhere to 6 feet of social distancing. Symptom checks, all parents must self-certify each day that their child is symptom-free. All staff must self-certify each day that they are symptom-free, and additional on-site symptom checking may be conducted. Personal protective equipment, PPE, face masks are required for all staff and students. Face shields are available for all staff, and hand sanitizer will be available in each classroom. Next slide, please. Transportation, which we're working on, so when it's provided, there should be physical distancing. Same household students will be seated together, and face masks are required. For building use, no building rentals in the fall semester except for the Park District, which we have through an intergovernmental agreement, as well as our YMCA before and after school safe and sound program. In the buildings, we'll also have an isolation room set up as well as extra room available in case we have to shift students from one room to another for any type of, if a student did, if we did notice symptoms or we felt like we needed to shift rooms, we would have that ability to do so. An isolation room would be set up in the room. As we said, this is a location for students exhibiting symptoms at school, and that we would be in contact with parents to pick up those students as soon as possible. Home isolation is when a student or staff member tests positive for COVID-19 and required to stay at home. And home quarantine is if a student or staff member comes in close contact. Once again, if they're within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes or more with someone that tests positive, that would be under home quarantine. We would be working closely with our local health departments on following those procedures. Next slide, please. For some of our other services, English language learners, or English as a second language and transitional bilingual education. For remote learning services, students who qualify will receive remote services developed by the English language learning team, and a plan will be shared with parents. The services will ensure that the necessary accommodations and modifications are developed for each English learner and communicated to the students' general education teachers with a remote framework. Scheduled in-person services, we are going to try to phase in students. Obviously, we're trying to prioritize which students need to get in sooner. Under phase 1, priority will be given to students that need to be screened for services and our English learning students undergoing an initial or reevaluation for eligibility. We also have some students who will be offered the opportunity to come in to complete necessary evaluation components. Under phase 2, students with significant challenges will be identified by their school teams for instructional and or related service delivery. This will be discussed with parents when the remote learning plan is developed. All services will be in a one-on-one or small group model in the school building following safety protocols that were just mentioned. Next slide, please. It's going to be very similar for our special education services. Students with IEPs will have a remote learning plan developed by the team and shared with parents. The plan will ensure that the student is being afforded a free, appropriate public education and within a remote framework. We will also start to look at scheduling in-person services, and we will phase that in as well, starting with under our phase 1 of ones who need annual vision and hearing screenings per state law. In addition, students undergoing an initial or reevaluation for special education eligibility, we would offer the opportunity to come in to complete those necessary evaluation components. And then secondly, we would look based on need and identifying by the school teams. This will be discussed with parents when the remote learning plan is developed, and all services will be in a one-to-one model in the school building following safety protocols. Next slide, please. For our students with 504s, students with Section 504 plans will have a remote 504 plan developed by the team and shared with parents. The plan will ensure that the necessary accommodation and modifications as contained within a student's 504 plan will be communicated to all staff and implemented within a remote framework. Included in the plan will be the methods of supervision and monitoring to maintain implementation fidelity. We also want to talk about food services. Next slide, please. Food services program will begin Thursday, September 3rd. That's our first day of student attendance. We'll have grab and go meals available for students, packaged as breakfast and lunch combo. Pickup will be between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Monday through Friday at all 21 elementary schools. Families will order daily or weekly meals online with an online form before 9 a.m. each day. Breakfast, lunch combination meal prices per day. Full pay would be $4.35. Reduced eligibility would be 70 cents per meal. Meals will be charged to the push coin account. Free and reduced eligible families will complete application as we usually do. Next slide, please. Athletics, the Illinois High School Association created a condensed schedule for high school athletic programs. Some fall sports were moved to spring while all seasons were shortened in length. The goal is to allow athletes the opportunity to participate in safe environments. Sports offered in the fall will include boys and girls golf, girls tennis, boys and girls cross country, girls swimming and diving. District 204 will follow the guidelines established by the governor and IHSA. Details can be found on the Restore Illinois website. The middle school athletic program will be suspended until after January 1st. Starting in November, the administration will collaborate with coaches about the feasibility of offering a condensed athletic season for each of the middle school sports. Not all sports may be offered depending on the COVID phase and availability of facilities. Next slide, please. Our other extracurriculars, District 204 recognizes the importance of offering extracurricular activities for our students. These opportunities help students promote their talents, cultivate friendships, and gain a sense of belonging. Our goal is to begin the year using an online platform with the hope of moving to small group as soon as possible. At the last meeting, we also talked about trying to work with community vendors on child supervision for families. 3 agencies will have full day support for children. Fox Valley Park District eCare, kindergarten through 5th grade, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Fox Valley Park District facilities, 2, 3, and 5-day options. YMC Safe and Sound Remote Learning Program, also from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m., 3 and 5-day options, and located in several District 204 schools. And then we also heard from Naperville Park District, and more details will be coming about that. So we provided a lot of details tonight, a lot of information. So for the next slide, our next steps, we still need parents to please complete online registration. Chromebook distribution and pickup information will be emailed to families in grades K through 2, 6, and 9 through 12 this week. You should be expecting to see an email this week about what that's going to look like. And then to prepare the start of school, please have your child log into their Chromebook once they receive it if they don't have it yet, and then follow the instructions with Chromebooks to check for software updates before the first day of school. Finally, we just want to revisit our Portrait of a Graduate, Social Emotional Learning, and We Are 204 about equity, diversity, and inclusion. Just so you know, this is exactly how we're aligning our professional learning for our teachers. We've done it over the summer in both optional professional learning, and we're using this as a guideline for our professional learning as we approach the year and then into the school year. We think more than ever, the students are going to need these skills to be successful and to help them as they move both through this environment that is new, as well as into the future. We do strongly feel that our teachers are going to support our students to the best of their ability and prepare them as we move forward. So with that, we are available for your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Talley. Thank you, Doug, and thank you to the staff and presenters. Very comprehensive. Last week.
Can't hear you, Mike. Try again. Get closer.
Last week, we had the opportunity for each board member to ask questions. That was a successful format. And so I'm going to do that again. So I will begin with Ms. Deming.
Thank you, President Razak. Thank you so much to the administrators for the extensive and involved work that you have put into this. It is evident that much research has gone into looking at what is best for our students and staff with this pivot that we've needed to make. One of the things, there are a few questions that I did have on the preschool side. Well, actually, I guess at the elementary level, can you just chat a little bit regarding, will the students be, everyone will have their own specific teacher according to the school that they are originally destined to? I wanted us just to talk a little bit about teachers, just so when we get ready to move back, whenever that is, that they're already with their specific teacher for their particular classroom in their particular school. Is that correct?
Yes, Susan, when we shifted to remote, one of the challenges we were having when we had the hybrid and the online academy was we started to see that we were going to struggle with being able to, especially for our online academy students, ensure that they were going to have either teachers at their building or even teachers in the district for certain of those courses, with how that started to play out. And so under this remote learning model, students are all associated with their home schools, just like they would be if they were in person. And so there'll still be teacher placement and teacher assignment that typically happens at this time of the year as we're developing schedules. But you should expect a student who attends Longwood to have Longwood teachers. You should expect a student who attends Neuqua to have Neuqua Valley teachers. And that's what you should expect under this model.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. At the middle school level, can we just chat? Can you share a little bit further of how I know that there were some questions, and kind of one came in this evening. Can you share a little bit more how the days will break out for our PA students at the middle school level?
Brad, are you able to answer that?
Yes. The PA question, as far as the students who are in Project Arrow, they are going to have the same teachers that they would have had if we had come back in a full in-person setting and never had experienced COVID. So there isn't going to be a change in the PA teachers that they have that is based on or impacted by COVID. However, some of our buildings have decreased in enrollment. And because of that decrease in enrollment, we have had to drop down the number of teachers. In doing so, that has forced us in some buildings to have to step away from a full PA team. That was going to happen whether COVID hit or not. That is just an outcome of the fact that as we decrease in size in buildings, we have to make some challenging decisions about staffing in order to be able to keep the same staffing ratio across the district and also ensure financial responsibility.
Okay, thank you. And I think I was pretty good at the high school level. I think I'm pretty good at the high school level, so I'm good. Thank you, President Razak.
Thank you, Ms. Deming. Ms. Grover.
Thank you, Doug, for the presentation. I kept in mind what you said at the beginning, which is that we are meeting the needs of the students, and that's what your focus was. And I appreciated that you thought of all the students that we have, like the ELL students, the special needs students, the STEPS program. I'm especially appreciated that there's a separate SEL for elementary, middle school, high school steps, because formerly it used to be interlaced with the other subjects, but having it as a separate basis, I really like that. My two questions are regarding the middle school and the high school. I know it was mentioned that the content is going to be rigorous regardless of Monday not having a live session, and the curriculum is going to be consistent as though we are in school. I think the concern may be, especially for high school students, if they're taking an AP class because they have to meet certain standards to take the test, how, if you can, I don't know, maybe talk to how the same consistency remains in middle school and high school as though we would have been in person.
I'll respond a little bit to this. Just last Friday, a couple of us from the school system were on a virtual meeting with College Board. In that meeting with College Board, we were talking, they were sharing with us the tools that they have created to support not just us, but all students across the country who are being taught virtually. They knew going into this year that they needed to come up with some very specific tools and methods that AP teachers can use. That information is going to be shared with all of our AP teachers. Some of this information includes videos of teachers actually teaching AP lessons that our AP teachers can use to help them in the process of presenting their lessons. So there's a whole toolkit of materials that College Board has made available to support us, as well as pacing guides that will support the virtual delivery of instruction. And so, as I said, that information is going to be shared with our AP teachers.
Additionally, I don't want the perception to be that there will not be any synchronous learning on Mondays. I know from talking with Linda, there's actually quite a bit of excitement about Monday, about being able to connect with students, and possibly looking at Mondays as an opportunity when we start to look at how can we start bringing small groups of students in. Linda, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. And that's absolutely true. One of the groups that we talked about bringing on Mondays and giving some support would be the groups that needed some enrichment and some, some extra opportunities for exactly those classes. So our Monday, the diversity in our Monday group
in the United States
is going to be really extensive. So yeah, we were hoping to meet with some of those students, and then enrichment opportunities for Monday are also important.
Well, thank you. And I think that's important for parents to understand also in the middle school that the curriculum is going to be still a rigorous curriculum too. The other thing I wanted to ask is, what you talked about the next steps. What can parents, because a week before, or a couple of weeks before, the parents used to find out who their teacher was, what classes. So what can parents expect to receive that material so they know what classes their students are going to be at?
Yeah, one of the things is, and I can let some of them get a little bit more into that, but scheduling students and getting all that work done is, takes a lot of time. We need people to register, and so as soon as, obviously before school starts, students will get their schedules and find out what their day is going to look like, or find out who their teacher is going to be. We still want there to be that excitement around that. I'm not quite sure yet if we have the exact dates those are going to be ready, because as I said, just work, a lot of work goes in the summer. Actually, it starts early. Some of it starts in the winter and in the spring about trying to get students scheduled. And that's what we're working hard on right now. Linda, do you want to add that for middle school? When can they expect possibly to have some of their high school schedules?
have everything finalized and ready to go. I know they're working on them now. People are finalizing things and finish them. We don't actually have a final date right now, but we'll be happy to put out that information as soon as we have it ready to go.
I think one of the things we have to remember, Doug said it, and I'm going to reiterate it. We still have about 3,000, 4,000 people who still need to register. And so the sooner they register, the sooner principals will be able to ensure that schedules are in place. Because what happens is we, as principals, you are putting students in the right classes and ensuring that they're balanced across all grade levels. And so that's an important aspect of it all. And so when you have that many still unregistered, it creates a little bit of a problem. So the sooner, the better.
So what I'm hearing is parents, tell your friends, tell anybody, please register. We need you to register.
Yes.
The other comment I want to make is I'm really glad to have the professional development for the teachers and how the teachers can support each other and how that's in the curriculum that you mentioned. So I'm really glad about that, taking care of the staff as well as the students. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Grover. Ms. Donahue.
So thank you to all of the speakers. It really is a purposeful and thoughtful plan that you have put together, and very obvious that it will be vastly different from what we saw in the spring when we had 1 day notice and closed all the schools and no one could get in there and get any of their materials. So looking at the comprehensive samples that you gave, I think was very important for people to understand that this really isn't like what they experienced before. I also am really pleased, like seeing the number of things that look like they're going to be small group opportunities for students. I love the idea of more, small group interactions with teachers and staff, and also within themselves. I think that builds a lot of connection to the school and to each other. And I know, remote learning is challenging for everyone, but I think that is an aspect that it will really help. And I really appreciated hearing that and the thought that's been going into that. I also would encourage, us to continue to look at how we can get these small groups and different students into the buildings, and fully supportive of trying to see that happen as soon as possible, safely possible for everyone. And my one question is, in looking at the sample days, and I do think it was discussed at the elementary level, but not so much at the middle and high school, when we convert into in-school learning, will those days look the same as what we're seeing on the remote learning, or will there be significant changes?
That's a great question, Lori. So, one of the things we talked about is how we would transition back to in-person learning after the first quarter. And so we have a lot of work in front of us to make that happen. I think, part of what we talked about is being fluid and seeing what's working and what's not working. So we have not lived under these schedules yet, and we're going to start living under those September 3rd. I do think we're going to see, are there benefits to this model that would be benefits to our students in an in-person model, as well as what we saw in a remote learning model. So I think we're going to have to weigh those things as we look at how we're bringing students back in, or whether it would shift to a full 9-period day. Obviously, there's things that we know from a typical schedule in the past when people were in person. But obviously, we're going to have to, connect that to looking again at, how many of our students are going to be willing to come in person at that time. And we're going to have to weigh those things with how we try to educate our students both in person and remotely. I wish I knew right now exactly if those, what those are going to happen to those schedules, come after the first quarter. But there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of evaluating and reevaluating, how those work for our students. Sorry, I know wanted more specifics, but it's going to be a work in progress.
No, I mean, I think it's important to hear. I mean, some of us ask questions, not, for our own knowledge, because we've had, discussions maybe with administration, but it's good for the public to hear the thoughts around this. And I mean, one of the things that has come up in email several times is for the high school students, the early time that school starts, could that be shifted? And I know there's been thought around that maybe would be beneficial also to share.
Well, there's always been two kind of conversations. You might hear of some other high schools or some high school districts that already run a block schedule when they're in person. So, looking at those different things and seeing what the benefits are and seeing how we can make that work for our system. But you're right, we might see other things about, that student agency and what can we do that helps. We did hear from a lot of families that liked remote learning because they had a little more control over it. They could sleep in a little bit more. They didn't have to worry about certain things. So you're right. Some of it's a work in progress, but I think it's also going to be great information for us to continue. We always look at how we can do things better. And I think this is going to give us more information on, what are the takeaways we can get. I mean, we want to be in person for students, but I think we're also going to get some great takeaways from this as well. Natasha, when you finished, you talked about PD. We are also looking at, how can we support our parents as well? Yes, we're looking at PD for our teachers to help our students, but we're also looking at how can we support our parents at home as well. And so this has been something that we've had a lot of conversations about and will continue to be looking at and communicating ways to do that as well.
Ms. Donahue, are you complete?
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rising.
Okay, I have a couple quick questions. Ms. Rosenblum. First of all, I know our preschool teachers are going to do awesome. And actually, let me just say, I think all of our teachers are going to do awesome. Elementary, can you just clarify for me again on Mondays? Most of the kids on Mondays will be finishing at 1, and then the teachers will let them know on Mondays if they are going to do individual things or group things on Monday. Is that kind of what I'm looking at on Mondays with elementary?
So actually, you're right. Monday is more of a typical schedule. Like they'll follow the same things that they're doing it for the most part, Tuesday through Friday. But that kind of advance notice on Mondays, because teachers then have that plan time, would be able to say to parents, hey, here's what's coming up Tuesday through the following Monday, to kind of give them that heads up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it would sort of make more sense to distribute it on Fridays, but they don't have the time to put it all together on Fridays. So it'll come out on Mondays for Tuesday through the following Monday.
Awesome. Okay. And then with the elementary school kids, just because, obviously with the 4th and 5th graders, they might be a little better at technology, but with the younger kids and not necessarily knowing if they're going to have parent instruction, are you going to try to, and this is kind of a real out technology question, you might not have the answer, that's okay. Are you going to try to keep them in one Zoom meeting for that whole time? Because it would be just too difficult to go back and forth, right?
Exactly. So we really are looking at, you're right, kind of that slower start at the beginning, especially as they're brand new to technology. So we really talked about some one-on-one connections just with parents and kids to get that up and running, but then some small group instruction. And you're right, we want to build to that full group instruction, and it will look like shorter amounts of time until we're getting kids really up and comfortable with that.
Okay, all right. Mr. Hillman, same kind of question on Mondays. Can you just kind of I mean, you know, I don't want our kids thinking this is going to be a lot like the spring, right? We're going to try to engage them as much as we can, 5 days a week. But can you just, Mr. Hillman from middle school, just kind of go over the same thing again? Like, will all students mostly be coming in for core time from 8 to 9? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Our full expectation is that Monday, core and encore time are definitely date times of attendance. Those would be 2 hours that would count towards the synchronous or the live portion that would be necessary. So it is our full expectation that teachers and students are interacting during that time. Building leaders, building principals, and their ILTs are going to be working together to structure what those 2 blocks of time really look like and how to make them most meaningful for students. And then also the enrichment and intervention time would also be an opportunity in which you're going to see quite a bit of learning taking place that involves teachers working with students, both from the enrichment standpoint, but then also from the intervention standpoint. I would envision also that we would have special education students who would be having services provided to them during this time in the live setting as well. So we definitely look at Monday as a day of accountability for both students and for staff, just like we do Tuesday through Friday. It just happens to look a little different.
Okay, and then we already talked about high school, so high school kids don't think you're getting Monday off. And then just 2 quick comments. Administration, thank you for trying to get the ELL kids in our schools and the special education kids in our schools for the services that they need, you know, especially those special education kids. I mean, it's so vital that they get those services, you know, and they don't get set behind. And then, you know, as we learn from that, hopefully we can roll things out once we get to the end of October. I just want to say one last thing and praise our teachers. I mean, obviously, the average parent here, I know I did it myself with middle school and high school. You know, there is not day-to-day as much instruction time as they usually get. And I'm assuming at middle school, you know, the 45 minutes live instruction, 35 independent, and at the high school, you know, 50 minutes live instruction, 10 minutes learning on your own. You know, I'm sure those are guidelines. I'm sure that's not going to be always necessarily the case. But you know, I know if anybody can do this in the district, it's our teachers. You know, they're not going to have as much instruction time, but I'm confident our teachers can get this done. You know, I think they're going to engage the kids like we've never seen before. I just have one personal question or personal favor, teachers. Please update that grade book and, you know, please get back to your students in a timely fashion, because I know a lot of students are going to be having a lot of anxiety again around online learning. And, you know, I know, especially high school teachers, I know how many students you could have. So I totally get it, but, you know, try to get back to these students. And I think our teachers and our students are going to do awesome. So thank you. That's all I had.
Thanks for saying that, Mark. I mean, this is going to be hard work. And I know our teachers are up for the challenge. We're so lucky to have the teachers we do in this district, but it is going to be hard work. And there's going to need to be a lot of collaboration and support to make this be as impactful as we know it needs to be for our students. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you, Mr. Rising. Miss Peel.
Okay, but really, just like everybody else has said, I really appreciated the presentation. It was very thorough. And having said that, it's a lot. I know when we had the other presentation, I said the devil is in the details. I think some of the details here are maybe not as many this time. But I know there's still a lot of details that will need to be worked through. But I appreciate that, you know, teachers are getting the PD. I appreciate that there's some flexibility here. both for the students and for the teachers in how they are going to manage this and put this and make this happen. I'm excited to have small groups come in, our students get that one-on-one, and especially our most vulnerable students. I do worry we don't want to push that too fast because we do want to still keep safety in mind. So those are pretty much my comments, other than block scheduling. It reminds me of the way students learn in college. And that's the way, I'm pretty sure we were doing it at the Frontier campus for a while, which really worked for a lot of students. So I'm pretty excited about that part. I know I've been thinking about the term revitalization. And I was thinking, you know, when you say revitalization, you're like, oh, new birth, new day, we're going to meet all our challenges. And I'm not sure that's the right phrase for this right now. I think it's more like transitioning. And I think if we look at it that way, it's a transition. We're going to eventually get there to our, you know, in-person learning. But this is a pretty good plan in the meantime. And I think the other thing that is very, very important, and Mark's mentioned it, other public comment has mentioned it. This is not our ideal. This is what we have to do to keep people safe. It's what we have to do to prevent other people getting COVID and people dying. I mean, this is a serious matter. So it's what we're doing to do that. It also, I think, puts us in the driver's seat going forward, rather than trying to figure out what to do if something happens and how do we make those changes. So at least this puts us in the driver's seat. But we really do need the community to be supportive of our staff and our teachers and our students. We all need to show that compassion and that support to each other. This is a really hard time. Nobody is saying this is our number one choice. It is not our number one choice. It is the only way that we can keep some very important things in place in regard to safety. So I really encourage our community to try to come together on this and help us make this a very positive thing. Our teachers are very talented, and I think they're up for the game right now. So I appreciate all the work that's been put into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peel. Mr. Karubis.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I noticed that the time is 9 o'clock, and so I usually start shutting down around this time. For Mr. Akarius, let's look at slide 23, please. I'm going to keep it brief. On that slide, we talk about assessing opportunities. I think it's really important for us to focus on these in-person services. Other board members have mentioned this as well. In order for us to have any chance of opening with either a hybrid or an in-person 100%, we need to learn how to operate with in-person services. So I challenge administration to aggressively explore those opportunities, but not only do that, but do those opportunities where we can bring people into the schools, and the education system and the community can learn how to operate under these pandemic environments in smaller groups with safety protocols. But we have big buildings that aren't getting fully used. We went online in order to minimize some of the interactions because of the safety issues. And now we've gone the other way. We've got these big buildings that aren't being used. And so there's a lot of opportunities there for us to get in there, pick your populations, pick your classes, pick your activities. I think I would like to see a lot of further reporting, growth and development, and what the administration is doing to ramp up in-person services. Because otherwise, 100% great plan. But I think looking forward, October, if we haven't done a lot of in-service activities, in-person service activities, then we're not going to open, and we're not going to have those. We've got to learn, and we're going to stub our toe. But let's do it safely with the small groups and the distancing, and then everybody feels comfortable with how it operates. So that's my charge to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Krubis. And I agree with you. I think last presentation, we talked a little bit about that controlled environment so that we can, we want people to feel like when we do it, we're doing it in a safe manner and that they're confident in that. And so we have to grow that, but we have to start kind of small, phase that in, build that confidence. We have people who want to go, all in right away, but we have to, people want to be with kids. And so, but we've got to make sure that we do it in kind of that controlled environment and build that confidence and know that our procedures are going to do the best that we can to keep as many people as safe as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karubas. I have two brief questions. Number one, it's maybe a reiteration of some of the questions that were asked about the rigor, but I'm going to frame it under curriculum pacing. And teachers and students expect a curriculum and to be achieved like within a quarter or a semester. So from my perspective, what I've seen is I see that you're attempting to do that. So if we go remote for the first quarter, is it the expectation that students will meet what was traditionally the curriculum pacing of a first quarter?
I would say our expectation is we need to move at a similar pace that we typically would during the year. Just like in a regular school year, every group of students that you work with, might have a different pace that you're supporting them through. But we are planning that our pace would prepare students as if we were in our environment before COVID. And so that's our plan, is to continue to move forward and meet those expectations and to support our students the best we can for both their social, emotional, but academic journey.
Thank you. And then for our students with special needs, and they go across the gamut. It was stated in the presentation that individual parent and team meetings would occur. And I understand that we're talking about a lot of kids. When do you anticipate that to begin? And did I hear correctly?
Yeah, Christina, are you still on and able to respond?
Yes, every student, similar to the spring, will have a remote learning plan. And the remote learning plan days that the teachers have before school starts is the time where they will have their internal team meetings and discuss the student's IEP and what their remote learning plan will look like for that student. So that's the time where they will discuss whether the student's, for example, physical therapy or instructional service needs to be held in a one-on-one setting or whether it can be done remotely. They then communicate that to the parent, and they discuss. The parent may have other views of how remote learning has gone over the spring and summer. They'll discuss that and come up with a remote learning plan that then gets attached to the IEP. So that will look as different. Everyone's remote learning plan will look as different as everyone's IEP will look. And it'll be specific to that student. And again, the priority is to have students in person for the annual vision and hearing screenings that all special ed students are required to have by state law. And then we'll move into the sessions as soon as possible.
Thank you. My last statement is, it's been my contention since we have gone to new learning plans that American education has had to redefine itself. We've been doing things for, over 100 years. And even when we did them for 100 years, it had some flaws. Boards of education exist in order to make sure that school systems move in a fluid and positive direction. And here, school districts across the state, Indian Prairie School District 204, has been asked to redefine the way we deliver education to our students within a 3-month time frame. Quite an awesome task. And I want to say that if anybody is going to redefine American education, it will be this administration. It will be our teachers. It will be our students, and it will be our community working together in order that we can serve our students in the best way possible. And also maybe learn from this experience in order to continue to improve the education we provide to our students. So I just thank everybody for the detail. I will admit, nothing is perfect. We will have a few stumbling blocks along the way, but if anybody can do it, we will do it. So thank you so much. Is there any additional questions from the board?
Mike, I did not have an additional question, but I did have a comment that I had forgotten, and a little bit on just as you concluded. But really, I'm so happy that Portrait of a Graduate and the social emotional piece was included in there, because so many, I'm so happy the administration took us on that journey last year, because those qualities and characteristics that really speak, that comprise Portrait of a Graduate, as you look as how this country has had to pivot, and educationally how we've had to pivot, when you look at those things, those qualities and characteristics that colleges are now looking for, and as they talk about how they are going to be reassessing, the applications and the questions that they're interested in, so much of those point to a lot of that resiliency, critical thinking, and flexibility, adaptability, communication throughout this time frame. So I'm so happy that our school district is already incorporating those characteristics for our students, and already has that forethought as we move into this period and begin this school year, because it's truly what we're seeing, where the education, those vital and critical characteristics that education nationally is searching for from our students as they go forward.
Thank you. Any others?
Mike, I have one question I meant to ask. As far as, a lot of this is going to be, teachers are going to be experiencing it, and then they're going to have suggestions or questions. How is that all going to be managed so that we do get, that our staff are being listened to and having a chance to discuss how things go forward?
That's a great question / comment, Kathy. We're going to have to make sure that there's an open door for communication. Typically, our teachers might turn to their either team leaders or to their principals or to their association president about suggestions and how things work together. So we plan to continue our regular communication, and we want to keep that door, open. I think we also need to make sure that we're asking those questions and seeking that feedback. We've done a couple different surveys, and I think we need to continue to think about how do we collect data on what things might need to be tweaked or changed, or maybe it offers some different suggestions on how we start bringing students back in person. But we've got to listen to those thoughts and ideas and figure out ways to both get that information and then follow through on that and ensure that people feel like they're heard. And I don't think it's just our teachers. We're going to have to, we might hear suggestions from our community, but we also, the only way this plan works is with everybody's involvement. Our parents, our students, our teachers, our nurses, our teaching assistants, our secretary. I mean, we have a lot of people that we're to do everything that we're proposing here. And we've got to be open and taking their feedback, especially that's part of our framework to evaluate and reevaluate, and we need that input to do so.
And just from an immediate standpoint, principals will be having an open Zoom meeting with their staff tomorrow or the next day. That would be an opportunity for this discussion to begin.
Others? Hearing none, I'm going to move on. And next we move to our action item. Our first action item is the approval of a resolution to open the opening of schools for the 2020-21 school year. School boards, again, across the state, are considering and have considered approving the administrative plans to reopen schools in their district. And so that is what is before us. The resolution, put simply, is to approve the plan that has been presented to us. It also directs and authorizes the superintendent and his designees to implement and enforce the plan. And the superintendent is authorized to modify the plan as needed, but the board must be informed, and the board can either approve or disapprove the modifications that have been made. That is the essence, basically, of the resolution. So I need a motion to approve the resolution for opening schools for the 2020-21 school year as presented. Please identify yourself as you make your motion and second.
This is Susan Deming, and I move that the board approve the resolution for opening of schools for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Kathy. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on behalf of the board? I hear none. So Jeannie, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Ms. Peel,
Aye.
Mr. Razak,
Aye.
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue, Ms. Donahue? Okay, thank you. Ms. Grover
Yes.
and Mr. Karubis.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0. Our next action item, and it needs to be done under policy, is to approve the amended calendar for the 2020-21 school year as presented. Again, please identify yourself as you make your motion and second.
Mark Rise, I make a motion that the board approve the wait, no, sorry, wrong one. Sorry, that the Board of Education approve the amended 2020-2021 school calendar as presented.
Is there a second?
Natasha, second.
Do we have a motion and a second? I think Mr. Hillman is available for questions. Is there any discussion or question?
Yes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, this is Mark. I know we had gotten something, an email that came to us that we still are doing the required, within that range of required days of school that we need to, that we are mandated to do per this new schedule, correct, Mr. Hillman?
Yes, I want to assure the board and the community that we have accurately counted for the required number of days of student attendance. We are required to have a minimum school term of 185 days to ensure 176 days of actual pupil attendance. And there are 5 types of days that count towards actual student attendance. There are days that students are present in school, institute days, full day school improvement days, full day parent-teacher conference days, and remote learning planning days, which are new to this particular year. We do have the minimum number when you add up the 167 days of student attendance, 4 teacher institute days, 2 school improvement planning days, 2 parent-teacher conference days, 5 remote learning planning days, and the 5 emergency days that will come to 185. The only major change proposed within the calendar is that we are moving the start date and we're adding those 5 remote learning planning days, which are decreasing the number of days of actual student attendance by 5. We're going down from 172 to 167, but we are still meeting the required number of days according to ISBE.
Thank you, Mr. Hillman. Ms. Stemming, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Hillman. I did have some questions and some concerns about that 167 days, which was a difference in the number of days that we had in person last year. But after the presentation this evening, I had already asked you earlier about those days, but after the presentation this evening and understanding the personal professional development for our teachers and those opportunities for enhanced learning capability as we move to a remote environment. I am very comfortable and very supportive of the number of days that we have on the calendar.
Thank you, Ms. Stemming. Others? Hearing none. Jeannie, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Mr. Karubis,
Yes.
Ms. Peel,
Aye.
Mr. Razak.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. We now move to our next action item. And now for something completely different. The approval of the FY 2021 tentative budget. I need a motion to approve the tentative budget as presented.
Mark Rise, I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve the fiscal year 2021 tentative budget as presented.
Do I have
Lori, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, and I know Mr. Strang is here.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, Mr. President. Tonight is the second to last step to adopting the budget, which we are spending plan for fiscal year 2021, which is the school year that we are just beginning. Tonight, we do ask you to take action on this budget, and we will post it in the newspapers and have it available for our community to look at for 30 days, and then we'll bring it back to you in September for the final budget. Matt Shipley, our comptroller, is again assisting me in the presentation. I'd like to thank Matt for all of his effort on working on this budget. He really spends a lot of great time and detail putting this together, working with me, the departments, and the schools. Next slide, please. Quickly, we're going to go over District Goal 3. That's something we do annually. We'll talk about some comparable district information. You'll look at our tentative operating and our non-operating budget, and then next steps. Next slide, please. The Board of Education asks that by June 30th each year, the district will receive a school financial profile designation of recognition. That is the highest profile score that the state can give you, and they look at that based on a number of indicators. One is your fund balance to revenue ratio, and that is how much money you have over at the end of the year and at June 30th, which is the point in time when you're ending your fiscal year compared to the revenue that you pick up. That profile indicator of weight is 35% of the total score towards your profile. Expenditure to revenue ratio is a weight of 35% also, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Are you spending more than you're taking in or spending less than you're taking in? Days cash on hand is worth 10%, and that's the number of days that you have on hand if no more revenue came into our school district. Next slide, please. Percent of short-term borrowing ability remaining. That is our tax anticipation warrants. At the end of May, if we were in a financial pinch and we needed to take out a short-term loan, that's what a TAW is. We've never needed to take out a tax anticipation warrant for the school district, so we receive all of our financial profile score points for percentage of short-term borrowing, and that is worth 10%. Percentage of long-term debt margin remaining, that is the bonds on our schools, and as you know, we've been paying those down, and in 2027, they will be paid off. The next slide, you'll be able to see an interesting point in that, but that is also worth 10%. So our revenue to expenditures ratio and our expenditures to revenue ratio are our two highest point award-winning scores. Next slide, please. There are 4 profile designations that you can receive. Financial recognition, which is the highest. Financial review, which is the second. Early warning, and then financial watch list. And for those districts that fall on the financial watch list, they usually get assigned a financial oversight panel, a group of retired superintendents and business managers to go in and try and look at all of their operations and where they're spending their money and how to help them get out of trouble. When you think of those 4 indicators, those 4 designations, of the 851 school districts in the state, 706 received recognition, 113 last year received review, 24 received warning, and 8 received financial watch. I can tell you that in the past, when I've looked at that, districts with strong revenue sources can fall into financial early warning and financial watch. It's not necessarily school districts that are low income school districts. Next slide, please. Now I'm showing you the 17-year history of Indian Prairie School District 204's financial profile. And you can see that we've received recognition in 2019. We will receive recognition in 2020. And the tentative budget that you're passing tonight, we expect that you will receive recognition in next year. The reason that fiscal year 20 isn't there yet is that our books haven't been audited and our information hasn't been submitted to the state. If you do look at that, you can see that there's a number of years, 2017, 2014, 2012, 2010, 2009, 2004, and 2003, when we received review. Those times that we received review, we really did something major in the district, started all-day kindergarten, instituted more technology or security measures throughout the school district, or we did not receive a state payment in time. So this was all things that are easily explainable. And if you look at the expenditure to revenue ratio column, which is the third column, the ERR, you can see in each of those years our point values that we received. Instead of receiving 1.4, we received 1.05%. So that was the reason for that occurring. If you look over to the LTD, long-term debt, very interesting. If you look down to 2003 and 2004, we received 0.2 as our score. And then through 2005 to 2018, we received 0.3. But in 2019, we received 0.4. We received our full value for long-term debt. And that is because we're paying our bonds down. And I think you'll continue to see 0.4 in 20 and 0.4 in 21. Mr. Shipley, would you take the next slide, please?
Sure. Thanks, Jay. So with the goal of achieving financial recognition, the district does have to spend revenue and expenditures at the same level and live within our means. So we start by looking at our revenue allotment, and as in prior years, the 2021 budget will rely heavily on local resources, and that's primarily property taxes. I think as we've covered throughout the forecast and budget cycle and in prior years, this does put Indian Prairie at a significant funding disadvantage when compared with many of our comparable unit districts. You can see on this slide, we're showing the revenue per pupil in 2020 for our Indian Prairie and our 7 other comparable districts. And it's broken out by local, state, and federal sources. Indian Prairie receives approximately $13,000 revenue per pupil. That's broken out $10,500 being local funds, about $2,000 in state funds, and then about $500 as federal funds. So as you can see here, of the 8 districts, Indian Prairie receives the least amount of revenue out of those 8 districts. And I think one thing that you can see relatively clearly here is there's actually 4 districts that receive more in local revenues than our district receives in all revenues. In other words, before those 4 districts receive $1 of state or federal revenue, they already have more funds available to them than we do at Indian Prairie. So as we discussed last month, we're only scheduled to receive the same amount of state revenue as we did in the prior year through the evidence-based funding. And really what this shows is until we're in a position where we're receiving significantly more state funding through the evidence-based funding program, our district will continue to fall short of our comparable districts when it comes to a revenue available to us. Just also for reference, we've talked a lot in prior presentations about the evidence-based funding formula, which calculates a percentage of adequacy for each district. Indian Prairie's adequacy percentage was 80% in fiscal year 2020, and will probably be lower than that for fiscal year 2021. Our 7 comparable districts range from 93 to 117%. So the shortage in revenue is not just on an absolute value as shown here, but also when we factor in the diverse student populations we see, because that does get accounted for in that evidence-based funding calculation. Next slide, please. So not surprisingly, with less revenue available, we also have the lowest cost per student across our comparable districts. With salary and benefits being the largest and primary cost for all districts, this does have a direct effect on our staffing levels, class sizes, and our administrator to pupil ratios. On average, Indian Prairie spends $9,400 on salary and benefits per pupil. That's 19% less than our 7 other comparable districts, which average $11,200 per pupil. So again, I think you can pretty clearly see that here that we're, again, the lowest in both total expenditures and in salary and benefits across our comparable districts. Next slide, please. So as we begin to prepare for the fiscal year 2021 budget, in addition to those revenue challenges when compared to our comparable districts, our
Our biggest challenge this year, obviously, was how to account for the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on our finances and how the remote start to the school year will impact that. And so our real point of reference there has really been to look at what our operations look like starting in mid-March when we went remote in the spring, and how that compared to the budget for fiscal year 2020. So I do have about 6 areas I want to cover here where we did see some variance from the budget we passed for fiscal year 2020. And I just want to talk through those really quickly and discuss how we've assessed those as we look to fiscal year 2021. But I guess the first thing I'll mention is that as our previous presentation showed, we really have diverted a lot of our resources as seamlessly as possible into the remote learning environment. So we still are going to see a majority of our expenditures, as in prior years, be spent on our classroom staff and teachers, although working remotely, we'll be working directly with our students. So getting into these 6 areas where we do expect to see some variances, I'll start with the 2 where we've that have had a negative impact. And the first is the lost local revenues. As we again covered in the prior presentation, we do not expect to see building rentals through the first semester, and we also expect to see some reduction in activity fees. So we have included a similar reduction to what we saw in fiscal year 2020 into the 2021 budget. The second area is we've seen a significant amount of purchasing for personal protective equipment and other cleaning supplies to ensure that our buildings are meeting all the health and safety requirements necessary. We do expect to continue to see a lot of additional costs in this area and have included these costs in the tentative budget. As we did discuss last month, a lot of this, but not all of this, will be funded with CARES grant funding. Transitioning, there were 4 areas where we've actually seen some positive variances or reduction in costs as a result of going into remote learning, but as we'll cover here, we don't necessarily expect these areas to continue through to fiscal year 2021. So first, in the area of transportation, we do save about $400,000 each month of remote learning through a reduction in transportation costs. We have not adjusted the 2021 budget for this adjustment at this time because depending on how and when we reopen, we may need those savings in order to provide transportation in a modified setting. So whether that's running more routes because of a reduction in capacity on the buses or similar needs, we've built the potential uses for those future savings into this budget. The second area that we saw savings in 2020 was a reduction in our use of paper, printing products, and other consumables. We saw a reduction of about $1.2 million in the spring. We have included about half of that additional savings into this 2021 tentative budget. Our buildings and our departments have been very good about spending funds only in a way that support our current operating environment. So we've not made any purchases in these areas to prepare for in-person learning, and we won't do that, or we won't authorize that until we know for sure we're going back in some capacity. If we do return to school, after the remote learning period, we could actually see an increase in these expenditures if, for example, our students can no longer share supplies they previously shared, or we need additional printouts or copies of different things to support our students in a new way. So that's why we haven't necessarily adjusted for the full amount of savings that we saw in the spring. The third area, we did see some savings in the spring, about $1.3 million for some hourly work, primarily substitutes, overtime that gets worked at our schools, and then officials for our interscholastic programs. And while we do expect some savings in the 2021 budget, we also expect to see some offsets to that amount in the form of online curriculum development and other online overtime that's being paid right now. To date, we've paid out over 1,200 hours, I believe, of curriculum development this summer, and expect to continue to see that through the month of August and even into September. So that's going to offset some of these salary savings. Finally, the largest area where we've seen a savings has been in reduced medical and dental benefits. And this really is a result of our employees that are on our medical plan deferring services that they normally would have had during the stay-at-home period. So deferring things like routine checkups, non-essential procedures, dental visits, physical therapy sessions, things of those nature. So while we saw a decrease initially in the spring, we're expecting that eventually those costs will ramp back up as employees catch up on those services. So we've not built in those savings just because we do expect to see those services actually increase and really, you know, almost have a doubling of those services once employees are able to return to their regularly scheduled doctor visits.
Matt, before you move to the next slide, I'd like to mention at this time that in the consent agenda and tonight's meeting, the Board of Education passed an insurance committee recommendation to move our medical insurance providers from Blue Cross to United Healthcare. That was 8 months worth of work and evaluation, and the final third of that had to happen remotely. And I really have to applaud the IPEA leadership, the IPCA leadership, non-bargaining, our administrators. Mike Baker from Group Alternatives was with us along the entire way, helping us assess the evaluations. And we are going to see significant savings through the moving to United Healthcare. Our plan year starts January 1st, so it's halfway through our fiscal year. We expect to see roughly half of those savings this fiscal year. And then next year, the second year of the contract, will receive the entire full amount. And we're expecting to see anywhere from $4.3 to $4.7 million worth of savings. The group really did a wonderful job looking at the opportunities of all of the providers, and it wasn't just the savings. United Healthcare really had some tools and some processes that really influenced the committee to move to the new company. So I'd like to thank the Board of Education for passing that along. Thank you, Matt.
Yep, thanks, Jay. I did, yeah, Jay jumped ahead of me a little bit. We were going to mention that savings, and I know the board is aware that we do expect to see savings in that area. But as Jay mentioned, with it really only being the back half of the fiscal year, the kind of catch up on the expenses that I mentioned earlier, and then finally we do plan on sharing those savings with our employee groups, which is in the union contract, where we do give that back through lower employee premiums too. So long term, I think we will, as Jay mentioned, we'll see savings, but not all of those savings will occur in this fiscal year. Next slide, please. So with that said, I just want to quickly go through some of the highlights of the budget, and this is at a high level, but despite the challenges we just covered, we are presenting a balanced tentative budget tonight, which is consistent with district goal number 3. This budget does support the current return to school plan, which the board just approved this evening. Most significantly, as part of that plan, is we are providing funding for PPE and the necessary health and safety improvements that will be required for use of our school buildings during the remote learning period, as well as when we are able to return to school. This budget does reflect our current union agreements and all major vendor contracts. And finally, it makes good use of non-operating funds to support critical capital improvements consistent with the district's capital. Next slide, please. So this is the tentative budget for the operating funds. We presented the same tentative budget last month. There's no changes at a high level to the tentative budget or preliminary budget we showed in July. We have made some adjustments at a line item or lower level that aren't reflected here as a result of the remote learning plan. And that, as mentioned earlier, that's really our departments and schools pivoting some of their traditional expenditures to support the remote learning environment, as well as obviously our teachers being asked to teach in the remote environment and support them as well. Across all funds, you'll see we are projecting a balanced budget with an excess of $946,156. But I will show quickly that we are projecting some decent excesses and deficits in between funds. And that's okay. Again, that under the state statute, which Jay presented earlier, everything's evaluated kind of consolidated across all 6 operating funds. So we don't need to show a balanced budget across the funds, just in total across all 6 operating funds. We do have the ability, if we wanted to, or if we needed to in the future, to adjust how the funds are allocated revenues. We would do that when we pass the property tax levy each year in December. I will point out that the 2 funds that show the kind of the largest variance is the operations and maintenance fund with a $6 million surplus, and then transportation, which is showing about a $4.8 million deficit. I'll just go through the reasoning behind both those. So the operations and maintenance fund, when we presented the forecast to you back in February, we included some capital outlay in the operations and maintenance fund. And as a result of the state holding us harmless with funding as opposed to providing additional funding, a reduced property tax levy, most likely for fiscal year 2020, as well as some of those lost local revenues we covered earlier, we've moved all capital outlay from the operations and maintenance fund into the non-operating fund. And so that's what's now generating a surplus in the operations fund. Transportation is showing a deficit because it is one of the funds that's most dependent on state funding. So with, again, state funding being held harmless and us predicting we may not receive all 4 of the mandated categorical payments, we're just projecting 3 at this point. That's about a $2.5 to $2.7 million hit in our transportation fund. Transportation also did have a contract increase of about 9%. That's about a $2 million increase from the prior year in expenditures. That's what's really driving that $4.7 million deficit. As mentioned, with the remote learning, we will see some savings during the first 2 months here, but with the unpredictability of the rest of the school year, we're not budgeting that or reallocating those savings at this time. One point I wanted to make before we moved on to the non-operating funds, there is a change on the state budget form this year that we've not presented at this summary level. But if you do look at the state budget form, once it's posted online tomorrow, you'll see that we're now required to budget for the student activity funds. This was a new change. I think there's been some concerns at both a state and national level over the level of transparency and accountability over these funds. And so those are now included in the budget. I want to ensure you that as a district and within the business office, we've always maintained a high level of oversight of these expenditures. They follow similar processes and controls to district funds as presented here. So this really doesn't change our operations, other than we will continue to reinforce the importance of maintaining good financial processes over those funds. The budget amount will be about $6 million in revenues and expenditures for those funds. And again, if you're not as familiar with those, because we haven't included them in the budget in the past, those are the funds that are used for extra programming, field trips, different fundraisers, sports and clubs at our school level. It's also how the school manages PTA donations or donations from other third-party groups. And it's really funds that are managed at the school level. So again, we'll be budgeting about $6 million in revenue and expenditures for student activity funds. That'll be on the ISB budget form, but it's not presented here this evening. Next slide, please. Similar to the operating funds, the non-operating funds have no changes since our last presentation. The non-operating funds include our debt service fund and our capital projects fund. As Jay mentioned earlier, we continue to pay down our debt, and we're getting at least within shouting distance of that 2027 date when our bonds will be paid off in full. But as you can see here, we bring in the property taxes and then make the principal and interest payments on those bonds directly out of the debt service fund. Capital Projects Fund, again, no changes since we talked about it in July. But again, this will be the only source for significant capital projects in this 2021 budget. The number 3 million is lower than what I think we would all like to see and what has been recommended to the district in prior years. So that really will just represent significant capital projects, essential projects to building envelope issues such as roofs, boilers, emergency repairs. And unfortunately, we do think that this may be the only source of capital funding in the foreseeable future too, which is why we are budgeting a lower amount than maybe would be recommended or ideal. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. Okay, thanks. Okay, so with that, the final step is that we are asking you to approve this tentative budget this evening. And with that approval, we will place the tentative budget on display, both in local newspapers and on the district's website. As Jay mentioned earlier, our auditors are continuing to finalize the fiscal year 2020 actuals, and we will be presenting you the final audit later this fall. And then at the September 21st board meeting, that's when we will hold the official budget hearing and final approval of this budget. Under state statute, we are required to pass the budget within 90 days of the start of the fiscal year. So that'll be our last opportunity to hold that budget hearing and have that final approval. And with that, Jay and I are both available for questions, but we again would like to recommend that the board pass this tentative budget this evening.
Thank you, Jay and Matt. Questions for them?
So I'd like to go, I know it's late, but I need to go back to slide 8. Justin, stay awake there. Matt covered this, but I have seen so many things on social media lately that I need to go back and reiterate this slide and the next one. You talked about that we're 80% adequacy funded, and maybe people don't understand really what that means, but it means that in the state of Illinois, we have funding to cover about 80% of the requirements for a school district, and it looks like it's going down to slightly below 80. So we're not a district that is by any means overfunded or sitting on top of a lot of money. And we're identified as a tier 2 district, which they can be tier 1 through 4, 4 being the highest where you're over adequacy. We're at tier 2, second from the bottom. So if you move to the next slide, oops, sorry. Yeah, okay. You can also see that we're not overspending our money, like we just are presenting a balanced budget, but compared to our comparable districts, we are very cautious with our money and very careful with what we're spending on our students. So I just wanted to make that point because maybe there's still a number of people on this call and also people watch the recording, and I've seen too many comments on the internet that I can't go silently here.
Mrs. Donahue, you said that wonderfully. I think you can help us present the final budget next month.
Other comments, questions? Mr. Carubus.
Slide 9, please. We've lost some local revenue. Seems like there's an opportunity to find some local revenue. Otherwise, I'm 100% in support of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carubus. Others? And I can't see everyone, so just please chime in. Okay, hearing none, we do have a motion to approve the 2021 tentative budget as presented. Jeannie, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Yes.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Mr. Karubis,
Yes.
Ms. Peel,
Aye.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
and Mr. Razak.
Aye, motion passes 7-0. Our next and last action item is the approval of the gift and donation report for the second semester. I need a motion to approve that report as presented.
Justin Karubis, I move that the Board of Education approve the gift and donation second semester 2019-2020 report as presented.
This is Kathy. I'll second.
So we do have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or any discussion?
I think it should just be mentioned, this is Mark, that our community is wonderful. Please donate to IPEF and help out our PTAs. They are significantly down this year and could really use our help. So if you can help our PTAs and Indian Prairie Education Foundation, that would be great. But our community never ceases to amaze and surprise us. So thank you.
As evidenced by the budget that we just reviewed, we are lean, and believe it or not, we are dependent on our community, on IPEF, our PTAs, and our parents to have the kind of excellence that we have. So I reiterate what Mark says. During a remote situation, there's a tendency not to participate in IPEF or the PTAs. Please, please, please participate. Your money goes to a good cause. Other statements or comments? Hearing none, Jeannie, please call the roll.
Mr. Karubis,
Yes.
Ms. Peel,
Aye.
Mr. Razak,
Aye.
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Mr. Rising.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We have two brief discussion items. One is the legislative update. You're still not working with our state legislature, but we have worked with the Illinois Association of School Boards in terms of our belief statements. Susan, can you provide a report?
I can. Thank you, President Razak. On Friday evening, the 7th, the Illinois Association of School Boards requested testimony from any school districts that had provided a resolution to be considered. And so I did represent our district with the resolution that we put forward regarding our belief statement that we put forward. And our belief statement was accepted. There were a couple of small suggestions on changes, but we felt that they were adequate, we felt that they were definitely appropriate, and we successfully have a belief statement that will be put forward to the delegate membership in November. So thank you, everybody, for your hard work and the suggestions as we looked to present last Friday.
Susan, can you briefly state what that belief statement was in regards to?
Yes, our belief statement, our belief statement pointed to the fact that there was not anything regarding equity, diversity, or inclusion regarding indicated in the state belief statements or in the resolution process. So we put forward a belief statement that indicated, I just want to read it quickly. Let's see. Our belief statement: the Illinois Association of School Boards believes that its member districts should provide the necessary leadership for equity, and inclusivity throughout their local educational communities. Districts are urged to integrate these principles in curriculum, policies, programs, and operations, ensuring every student is welcome and supported in a respectful learning environment. There were just a couple changes. The meaning of our statement, belief statement, stays exactly as we submitted it. And there were a couple of districts who expressed their appreciation to us for putting the statement forward.
Thank you, Susan. Last discussion item is Board of Education update. Ms. Grover asked to speak to us about the census. Ms. Grover.
Thank you, Mike. So the census happens every 10 years, and this year's census reporting ends on September 30th. The census count determines the amount of federal funding that states receive for services, including programs that impact schools, such as special education, Title I, food assistance, early childhood programs, and ELL. There are certain demographics that are uncounted, such as children under 5, special needs, homeless, and minority. Every person in the household counts. The money that Illinois received under the CARES Act was determined based on a census that happened 10 years ago. So that is why an accurate census is important, because it determines the federal funding that we will receive for the next 10 years. For each person that is not accounted for, the community loses $1,800 per year. So I'm asking everyone to please complete the census. Dr. Talley mentioned that there are about 3,000 people who haven't registered as yet. So when you go to register your student, you can also complete the census online at my2020census.gov, or you can do it by phone or by mail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grover. Any other updates or comments? Hearing none, please identify yourself as you make your motion or second. I need a motion to adjourn.
Justin Carubus, motion to adjourn.
Natasha Grover, second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.